Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beef Brunch news update for the week ending February the 17th. This is Jason Holmes in the northeast part of the state. We got Lee Faulk over in the northwest and Vince Desitail down in the central part of the state. Good bit to talk about with y'all today and catch up on some field conditions and some market reports. So we'll get into it with Vince up first. Vince, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure to be with you all again this week. Well, it certainly feels like spring. Spring is in the air, I guess, according to temperature and rain forecast. We got a slight chance of rain coming on Wednesday, but just very minimal, maybe a tenth or two. And 80-degree weather. That's certainly a blessing, as many of our producers, sold hay early in the hay production year and are now short. So we have folks looking for hay, and contrary to Louisiana sending a bunch of hay out of here, we're looking for the return favor at this time and place. So um, we're hoping for a soon change and maybe some spring grass starting to grow, because it's we're down to the bare minimum on the haystack, that's for sure. Um, Cattle prices, I'm sure you're going to cover that, but there's a lot of enthusiasm in the local area as far as prices. At the sale barn, I sat and watched a little bit down here in Opelousas on last Tuesday, and watched a 435-pound calf, a good kind of black hided calf, brought $2.15. So that was very promising, and that's pretty good money. So with that moving forward, we have a lot of cattle that are losing condition just because of the lack of winter forage. We losing that forage. Sounded like a broken record, but we lost most of our grazing with that freeze between Christmas and New Year's, and it just has not rebounded. And fertilizer prices are still relatively high, or they're still very high, should I say? And producers are very still apprehensive about spending that money on top dressing, but they may spend a little bit here moving forward in the next week or so with these warmer temperatures, and I think we'll get some good and some just out of making a fertilizer application. Anyhow, a light application will get things moving. Spring calving is well underway right now for our part of the world. Next week on, it'll be heavy calving. So we definitely need some forages coming, or some sort of supplementation, because we can see body condition scores kind of going down just because of there's really nothing to eat, and cows need a worming and pens are wet. We don't need to even get into that discussion, but people are not going to put cattle in pens and cut them to the knee, so to speak. So uh, people are starting to talk about spraying hay fields already. We're starting to make a few recommendations, because it's certainly fresh on their mind, it being short of hay, and they're over anticipating having an early start, to get some of that hay made up. So a lot of bull sales coming up. People are testing bulls currently and putting bulls out for the spring calving season for next year. So hopefully that we don't have too many failures on bull tests, because the good ones are not cheap and the cheap ones are not good, say like the fella. So we can't justify putting cheap bulls out there to have a maybe crop. So with that being said, feed stuffs again. Jason, I'm sure you'll cover that in your segment, but feeds exuberantly high at this time, because commodity prices are still relatively high. So just people are just apprehensive and anticipating the early spring, and hopefully that comes into intuition here soon. So moving forward in the crop area for our area, which we rely on a lot of rice straw for two reasons: one, for crawfish production, and also for making hay. And um, this morning we got up and at daylight, and my wife said, "Is that a crop duster flying this morning?" I said, "Yep." I said, "They got 80 degrees planned for forecast out through the week." I said, "They'll be planting some rice by the end of the week." March 1st is middle of next week. So we get some soil temperatures that get in the 60s. We'll get some rice planted, and things will start moving forward and feel more like spring again. So with that being said, still, spring calves are not doing that great, because there's not a lot of forage to be had, and still a lot of concern on these high-ended, high-priced supplements that producers are just not spending the money for them. So a lot of people don't have the extra money at this point in time. So hopefully we get into a better situation weather-wise and get some ground dried up. We've got a lot of limping cows around, a lot of foot rot going on. It's just been saturated and wet. So that's about all I have. We just on the heels of the state livestock show and got to see a lot of folks down in Gonzales, and that was always good. And people from across the state. In fact, I was just entertaining a phone call when we started this conference from down in Vermilion Parish with the lack of agent in Lafayette and Vermilion, and naturally I'm in St. Landers, so I'm the next point of contact. So I guess I'll be getting some of those spring calls until those positions get filled. So if we can help you in any way with making some forward motion and getting some early things done on hay fields, feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information is associated with these updates. So be happy to help people as we go forward. That's about all I have.
All right. Thank you, Vince. And we will touch on a good bit of those markets as we get towards the end of this news update. But this time, Lee, I'll turn it over to you for a report coming out of Northwest Louisiana.
Thank you, Jason. Glad to be with y'all here today. Weather has been remarkably warm the last couple of days. We're recording this on a Tuesday. I mean, for release on a Tuesday. On a Monday. How about that? I'm getting my wires crossed. Warm in this afternoon, up into the 70s highs, in the 80s forecast. Most importantly, those nighttime lows are barely touching the 50s. So that bodes well for these winter forages. Starting to dry out just a little bit. It's been windy here the last few days, and I think today, in fact, I stopped a little while ago and we're under a wind advisory now, of all things. And it's the kind of weather it'll blow your sombrero off right now, and it'll land over at Jason's office one parish away, as windy as it is here at the Hill Farm right now. But it's doing that. Wind is having a benefit. It is drying things out, because man, it has been a slop hole around here. We say over and over, and just like a broken record, like Vince said, he didn't want to go into it, but for us to be talking about how wet it is in pens and pastures and such, that means it's really wet, and everything. But the winter forages, including the ryegrass and the cereal grains, look pretty good. Starting to see a pretty good rebound on some of them, especially those that have been able to get out there and probably got the litter on them early on, especially during the fall. Those pastures are really making a turnaround pretty quickly. Folks that are relying on applications of a synthetic fertilizer are just a little bit behind, simply because you can't drive a tractor across most of the pastures up until the last day or two. So that forecast of highs in the 70s and 80s, boy, it sure looks good moving out. We got some people that have started thinking about some spring working, especially on those fall calving groups. Got that on their minds as far as if this drying trend continues, and trying to get those cattle penned and try to start on some working on those calves and whatnot. Spring calving is well underway, I would say, for us, for most of these folks that calve on the spring season around here. And of course, they welcome the warmer weather more than anyone, not having to calve and worry about a calf freezing, pulling calves in 30-degree weather. That's nobody's idea of a fun time, for sure. A lot of optimism in the markets right now in this part of the country. Vince giving an example on a 4 to 5 weight steer, I believe what he said. These lighter type handy weight cattle are setting the market on fire right now, folks. And if you break the numbers down and you look at these 7 to 8 weight more feeder type cattle, that they're really not keeping track of these lightweight calves. Talked to several folks trying to make decisions on keeping or selling, keeping them right now or sending them on down the road and getting them sold. And it's kind of a different talk. We may have touched on this briefly, but whenever corn's not quite as high, when feed's not as high as what it is right now, it's an easier debate. We can keep them. This is what it's going to cost to keep them eating, keep them healthy, keep them gaining ever so slightly. It's a whole different talk whenever we're speaking about feed that may be north of $400 a ton. It can really get in your pocketbook quick. So telling folks, just study your lesson real closely. Maybe I'm wading into more of opinion than this is fact, I guess, but I'll just make this statement. These calf prices are awful high, folks. They're awful high. And if you look at what the cost of gains are on some of these larger feeder type cattle, I can't imagine laying out that much money on them right now. It's taking a pretty big gamble when you get to looking at what some of these break evens are going to be running on some of these high dollar cattle right now. But that's the reason why I'm not in that business full time, at least, and why I'm not a professional cattle feeder by any chance, unless it's out of a 5-gallon bucket. How about that? But I would hate to be laying out some of these money on some of these cattle. A lot of this demand is driven by folks trying to catch up and trying to get some cattle bought for the spring and summer grazing season out west. That's what I've been told, a lot driving a lot of this demand on these lightweight cattle, and the board has reflected the optimism too. And I know that's kind of stealing some of Jason's thunder. Didn't have any notes prepared for today because we had a meeting of the Northwest Region Ag Ambassadors, a group of high school students that are focusing on careers in agriculture and ag advocacy, learning more about issues and stuff facing the ag industry. And this is our first year doing it. Central Region's got a program like it as well. We kind of modeled some things after what Central Regions has done. They've done a great job with theirs. But folks, I've really enjoyed working with this group of young people. I've worked with kids, of course, with 4-H livestock projects and so on and so forth for many years now. But it's great to work with a group of young folks who say that they have an interest in ag and want to pursue careers in it. And so I learned just as much about them through the process as they do. We got the chance today to tour and visit with the folks at Parish Meat Processing there in Sibley, Louisiana. It's in the Northwest region in Webster Parish. It's a new small facility, roughly about 2 years old now, if my memory serves me right. Small facility, but really trying to do some good stuff. Processing a lot of cattle for these area producers that are in the meat business, that are selling beef. So just wanted to give them a real quick shout out and say how much we appreciate getting the chance to come in and visit with them about the end product and about the ultimate destination on some of these cattle. Appreciate their efforts towards the beef business up in our corner of the state. I'm going to wrap it up with a final statement, and I asked his permission before I went into this, and he's starting to smirk, but I figure I better notify you all of a couple of things. One being that this is our last news update with our colleague, Mr. Holmes there. Jason has had a long and illustrious career with the Ag Center and riding off into the horizon for bigger and better things, so to speak. I've got to say, folks, how much Jason's done for the cattle industry in this part of the state for the producers. Every time we talk about it, bring it up, Jason always has the producers in mind, common sense in mind too. Not every solution is economically feasible, and Jason's good about focusing on what's economically feasible for the producer to produce the best product possible. But all that. I've got to tell y'all something else, and I've shared in front before I do any talk when Jason's present. So I got to share it one more time, folks. Jason was my 4-H agent all those years ago when he started his career with the Ag Center. I think my junior year of high school and my senior year of high school, Jason was my 4-H agent, and so it has been a pleasure, a true pleasure to work with him. Vast wealth of knowledge on the cattle industry and on extension as a whole. And we are certainly going to be missing Jason in all the programming that we collaborate on. So, Jason, I want to just say publicly thank you. Thank you for all your help over the years. Thank you for being a good extension agent. Most importantly, thank you for being a good friend to the cattle producer in Louisiana. That's all I got.
Thank you, Lee. I certainly appreciate it. A lot of good memories, lots of good really good friends, and it's been one of my greatest pleasures to work in this position. All the way from my 4-H years, all the way into doing just adult work and beef cattle and poultry, and it's a lot of good memories that I plan to continue to utilize as I go forward into the next part of um, this life, I guess, and what I'm going to be doing next. So, looking forward to continue to see y'all at some of the events around the state. So I certainly appreciate the comments. Y'all were talking about livestock working, so I do know a couple of folks that are working some fall calves this week. I visited with them this morning. They're going to take advantage of the warm days, and like Lee said, a little bit of drying. But as you move to the east of the Washita River, still pretty damp over on that side. So I got a feeling any of those fall calves, it'll still be a few days or a couple of weeks before they can get into those pens and start doing some of that working on those calves. It's kind of funny you talked about the crop duster events. So going down to the state livestock show last week and then the return trip. So the way I go down there is I travel down through the Mississippi Delta all the way to Vidalia, and then hit the Tunica Hills in between Vidalia and Natchez and Woodville, and pop out back in Louisiana and St. Francisville. But going all the way through that Delta, it was obvious that the corn planters are getting it on their mind, because there has been a good bit of burn down that's been applied. You can see those fields that already been sprayed with burn down. So getting that winter cover crop off. So yeah, these 80-degree days, it's going to get it on their brain pretty quick in terms of getting some of those crops in the ground. Looking at our markets for the weekend of February 17th, the weekly slaughter this past week was 627,000 head. That's down 4,000 from the prior week, and a large 43,000 from the last year. So a big drop over the last year, but we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of that in just a minute. So choice box beef closed the week at $275.65 a hundred. That's up $7.76 from the previous week, with a choice select spread of $14.71, which is up $1.32 from the previous week. So that does halt a 6 consecutive week decline in choice select spread. So I'm going to give y'all something to ponder on. So this is some of my readings and some of my thoughts as I was getting ready for this. We've gotten some smaller slaughter numbers now for the last several weeks. So I got two questions for you. Are we backing up cattle in the feed yards, or are packers having a hard time finding the animals that they need to fulfill their demand on box beef? Me personally, this is Jason Holmes's opinion. I think they're having a hard time finding those cattle. I don't, Lee, you've got a lot of contacts out there in the feed yard industry. I'd be interested to see if you could reach out and see if they're seeing some backups in some of those kill pens. It would be interesting to see, but I personally think they're just having a hard time finding them. And the reason being is because in the negotiated purchase report for this past week, so 76,616 head. They had a little over 100,000 head last week or the week prior in that same report. So in both of those, we had over 70% of those on a 1 to 14 day delivery. So anytime we can keep those high percentages on that 1 to 14 day delivery, that tells you that packers are hungry for cattle. They need them. So in that negotiated purchasers report, Texas Panhandle live purchases traded $2 higher at 162. In Kansas, they traded $1 to $2 higher at 162. In the Western Corn Belt, mostly steady to $2 higher from 160 to 162. In Nebraska, live purchases were mostly $1 to $2 higher, 159 to 161. So still some really strong numbers in that fed cattle market. I think if you look at the fundamentals, you look at what trade is currently doing, you look at what domestic demand is currently doing, and I think we're going to continue to see those prices climb as packers get to the point to where they've really got to go out there and compete in the marketplace for some of these fat cattle, just because there's not a whole lot of numbers out there. Live cattle futures market settlements in the front months ended the week with April up 57.5 cents at 164.70 and June up 40 cents at 160.12. So as we compare the week open with the week close, live cattle futures ended the week 30 to 40 cents lower when compared to the week open. 5 to 600 pound steers, medium and large ones and twos, sold from 185 to 198. So that is $10 to $13 lower when compared to the previous week. So the previous week would have been the 6th through the 10th. We're comparing the 6th through the 10th with the 13th through the 17th. So I'm looking at my calendar to make sure I get those dates right. So don't let that drop of $10 to $13 scare you, because what I think, whenever that week of the 6th through the 10th, I think we had a correction in there. Because between the 10th and the 17th, so the 6th through the 10th, we had a lot of buyers out there trying to fill their tickets. And we had just come off of that week of the ice storm. So we had a lot of buyers out there. They needed to fill their orders. And then as they filled those orders this past week, the 13th to the 17th, we saw a little bit of correction there. So I don't know that I would let that drop scare you, but still an average of $1.85 to $1.98. Again, I tell you, that is an average on 5 to 6 weights. As Lee and Vince have both stated, that's some pretty good money on a 550 weight calf. 700 to 800 pound feeder steers sold between 163 and 172. So that was $3 to $6 lower when compared to the previous week. Futures market settlements in the front months ended the week with March up 30 cents at 186.52 and April down 15 cents at 190.45. So whenever we compare the week open to the week close, 68 cents to $1.15 lower. So on our cold cow market, that's still a market that for this time of year is really good. So we've seen some smaller cow kills, which is driving that market up. Just again, supply and demand. So those lean cold cows in thin condition into the week down 3 cents at 82 cents a pound. Those in moderate condition into the week down 4 cents at 90 cents a pound. And those in high condition, those breakers, ended the week up a penny at 94 cents a pound. So still some pretty strong numbers there on that kill cow market. In our feedstuffs of the week, soybean meal up $6.70 at $531.10 a ton. Soybean hull steady at 200 a ton. Rice bran steady at 200 a ton. Cottonseed meal steady at $392.50 a ton. Whole cottonseed down $5 at $350 a ton. Corn gluten feed meal steady at $800 a ton. DDG's down $3.67 at $296.33 a ton. And corn down 5 cents a bushel at $7.08 a bushel. And that'll wrap up our markets for the weekend in February the 17th. I'm going to touch on one event coming up, and then Lee, I'm going to throw it back over to you, if you will, touch on our beginner cattleman program that's coming up real fast. So Lafourche Parish Beef and Forage Field Day will be held Saturday, March the 4th at Cajun Cattle Company in Lockport. Registration begins at 8:30. There will be a lunch provided. Please RSVP by Monday, February 27th by contacting Randi Lynn Toups, and we'll put her contact information in the description of the video. Good opportunity for you guys down there on the south end of the state. And Lee, I'm going to kick it back over to you if you'll touch on beginner cattleman real quick.
Thanks, Jason. So we're kicking off a beginner cattleman program. It's going to be based out of the Red River Research Station in Bossier City and also out of the DeSoto Extension Office. We're going to be going not back and forth between the locations, but we'll have one event at one facility and one at the other. Seen a large amount of interest right now. We do have a few spots available. So if you're interested in that, give me a call. You can reach out to any one of us and we'll get you fixed up with the information on that. We also have our AI class scheduled, Jason. I should have mentioned that earlier. So I'll do that at this time. I think we announced it at our last on our last news update, but AI class at the Hill Farm Research Station in Homer, April the 12th through the 14th. And be getting a flyer out on that registration form. Encourage you to call the station and book a spot if you're interested.
All right, Vince, I didn't ask you, you got any events coming up we need to touch on in the central part of the state?
Not at the moment, Jason. We really don't have anything scheduled. We're kind of waiting on Ashley to come back from her maternity leave. We do have some events probably coming in the fall. We just wrapped up a Master Cattleman program in December, which we've got some more interest in one here in the central region. I've had 3 or 4 phone calls in the last couple of weeks, and we had people that were apprehensive about doing things from COVID. We had a hard time getting a class going here, but we did so, and I think there's a lot of interest that lies ahead. So we may try to start one here again this year.
All right. Thank you, sir. And again, thanks to everybody for listening to these news updates. And I look forward to seeing y'all down the road. Thank y'all very much.